So basically your sales pitch to me, the reviewer, is I want to be a doctor because it's the only thing I can see myself doing. Application Renovation Season 4, Episode 8. How are you doing?
I'm well, and yourself?
I am excellent. I'm excited to chat with you about your application, see where we can hopefully improve, because it's been a couple application cycles for you now with success with your interviews, but no acceptances. Let's talk about that. So 2 interview cycles.
Yep.
5 interviews.
5 total, yeah.
5 total interviews. So you're getting traction. Mm-hmm. What's happening on interview day?
Last cycle for 2021, I interviewed at University of Iowa, the Mayo Clinic, and then CU. My Iowa interview, obviously, like first interview, wasn't sure what to do, read the book, did a bunch of preparation. I think I over-prepared some things, under-prepared others. Nervous. It was over Zoom. I wasn't sure what to expect. Yeah. And I've always done better having conversations in person, that kind of thing. So I can't say I completely fumbled it. It just wasn't my best performance. Okay. Oh yeah. So the interview at the Mayo Clinic and then the interview with CU, both ended up in wait lists. I feel like they went well, progressed, kind of from that starting point moving forward, knowing what I needed to do, getting more comfortable with the Zoom platform with interviewing. And then this year, I interviewed with the University of Iowa again, this time in person. I knew what I was coming into, so I thought that went really well. And then with the Paul L. Foster down in El Paso, I interviewed with them and had amazing feedback on my application. The doc that I interviewed with, the med student that I interviewed with, both really liked what I had to say and what was on my application. So there's some minor detail in there that I'm missing that I'm hoping we can suss out.
Yeah. Interesting. Iowa. I didn't know Iowa was doing in-person this year. I knew of one other school. So bucking the trend of virtual interviews. I hope medical schools keep virtual interviews, although there's a couple that are already switching back to in-person. So it's kind of sad because it's helped a lot of students.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of your application activities, essays, anything that you think is holding you back?
I've thought about this for a while now. I don't have a ton of shadowing hours. I definitely utilized the online shadowing through Med School HQ. When I sat down and had my, debrief last year with Iowa, they were like, we want to see more shadowing hours. So that's what I did. Other than that, I can't really think of anything that's like super standout-ish, but a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah. Got it. All right. Let's go and dive in.
Okay.
All right. So first thing I always like to point out, when you applied day 1. So good job getting that in.
That was one of the things that I didn't do the year prior. I was not an early application the year prior. And so I was like, this one thing I can for sure fix.
How late were you last time?
Middle of July, because COVID kind of pushed things around for me. I ended up, kind of struggling with the distance learning, and my MCAT got pushed back from March to June. Yep. So things got like all jumbled up. So I ended up pushing off everything, restudying for the MCAT, doing the MCAT, then doing my application. So it didn't get in till June, July.
Yep. Got it. All right. Demographics, all redacted out. SES disadvantage, again, I like pointing this out. This is calculated usually from education level, potentially occupation of parents. Red flag area, no big red flags, which is great. And then we get to your academic record, and we see some A's. Some B's snuck in there, but lots of A's all throughout schooling. So from a GPA perspective, obviously super solid with a 3.78 science GPA. Nice finishing touch your senior year, 3.95 your last 21 science credits there. So 3.8 cumulative undergrad, 137 credits. Great job. Okay, so GPA, not a problem. And MCAT score, not a problem at all, except for this CAR score.
Yep.
What the heck happened there?
So it's really funny. Cars was one of those things that was just so volatile for me while I was studying. I do my 2 Jack Weston passages a day. In the last 6 weeks, I was hammering the AMCAS cars, hammering the UWorld cars. And I really never found a groove. I get some good passages that my brain could wrap themselves around. Even if it was like super obscure, there was something that would click, and I do well, like 128, 129, 130 in the cars. And then, the next week on my practice tests, I don't know if I just didn't pick it up. My brain would wander, and it'd be in the 123s, 124s, 125s. Unfortunately, on test day, that's when the test anxiety hit a little bit. I was like, oh my God, I'm doing this for real. And I blanked out for half a passage and I skipped a question, and I was like, okay, it's okay. Just keep moving on, get to the end of the car section, go through, make sure I answered all the questions. And I missed a question. And that's when I knew. I was like, uh-oh, this was a bad cars day for me.
It was one of those days. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they have this myth that the MCAT, all of the sections have to be balanced. So you have a very unbalanced 123 with your 130 and 132s. Was there any concern that you would need to immediately retake this because of that 123?
So initially, yes. I was freaking out. I actually ended up DMing you on Instagram. And I was like, hey, should I still apply with this card score? And your response was like, it's a great score. Just do it anyway. And so I'm like, my thought process was I almost can't get better on one of them. I physically can't get better on the other 2. I should just run with it for what I have at the moment.
And you got an interview at Mayo, Iowa, and CU. Mm-hmm. They didn't care, right? Mayo, great medical school. University of Colorado, where I'm on faculty, obviously super prestigious. Right, most schools aren't going to care that you got a 123 in cars. It looks a little bit weird, but guess what? People are allowed to have off days. And the fact that you scored 130, 132s in the other sections tells the person you can think critically. Just for some reason, cars did not stick with you that day. And that's okay. All right, so let's get to your activity section. So we have teaching, tutoring going on from April 2020 to May 2020. Why is this only 25 hours?
So it was something that was kind of just thrown together right at the beginning of COVID with with my local university. Something to do to help the kids that were, middle school, high school, some elementary school kids with math and science stuff.
Yeah.
And it happened really quickly. And then all of a sudden their school year was over. And the program just kind of dissolved. But I got in on the front end of it. I helped with a bunch of the logistics, making the connections between D51 and CMU. And so it really didn't last very long. And I only got to do a couple tutoring sessions because unfortunately we didn't have enough time to get the message out before their school year ended.
Okay. So it's just kind of a quick little thing. Yeah. Got it. So it would have been nice to potentially see a little bit of a story here, right? I love stories. So it was a quick little thing of just about the activity itself and not necessarily you in that activity, to help showcase a little bit more. Shadowing from February 2020 through July 2022, which is expected start date of medical school, which is fine. 85 hours. Why no shadowing before that February 2020 date?
So I had never really thought about it. I toyed with the idea of asking my primary care physician. I'd worked in EMS since I was 18. And so until I really started thinking about the medical school application process and putting the rubber on the road, I was like, I've never actually shadowed a doctor. I've only ever worked with them.
Yeah.
I probably should do this to, yes, check the boxes, but to be like, I can, because I've only worked in the hospital. Can I see myself working in clinic? Can I see myself in a different specialty besides emergency medicine? Those kind of things. And so I was like, I need to do this. And I just started asking every doctor I saw at work, and most of them said no, but I had one say yes.
All right. So moving on, we have a research lab, a good chunk of time, 400 hours here. The description here, little sales pitchy, right? Talking about your ingenuity or ingenuity, if you're fancy. Selling that a little bit there. Not terrible, but something I noticed. Trap and Skeet Club, really cool, right? Probably not a lot of kids applying to medical school with Trap and Skeet Club on their application. So nice little story that you told here. Disabled Veterans Winter Sports Clinic would have been, I think, a lot stronger if there was a little bit of a story in there of one of the people you were interacting with, helping.
Okay.
But not terrible. And then we get to some medical clinical. So emergency room technician from July 2018 to June 2022. Obviously a big chunk of time, so kind of full-time-ish experience of you doing that. And then decent writing here for your description, your most meaningful, nice little kind of description here. The thud of the bit finding hollow space as the neurosurgeon drilled resonated in my hands. That was a little bit interesting because I'm like, wait a minute, I thought we were in the emergency room, and now you're talking about the drill and the neurosurgeon. Isn't that in the operating room? Unless it was bedside in the emergency room, because someone had
it was bedside in the emergency room. They do them. They do the burr holes in our ER fairly often.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't want people to herniate. So let's relieve that pressure. So all really good. Again, a little bit sales pitchy with my nurses can count on me to do my part without having to ask. Working as ER tech has become more than just a job. It is who I am and how I'm able to make a difference in my community now. So my question, if this is who you are, an emergency room technician, why are you applying to medical school?
Yeah. I want to do more. I want to have a bigger scope.
No, stop though. But you don't say that here. Okay. I am an emergency room technician. That's who I am.
Yeah.
No, that's not who you are. It's a stepping stone for what you want to do. So just be careful with that kind of language because it seems like I'm good here. Like I don't need anything more. And obviously there's a lot more to your application. There's your personal statement, other activities, secondaries, all of that stuff. But be careful of those little comments of like, I'm happy where I'm at. Pre-med club from 2018 to 2020. Any leadership roles here? Or was it just involvement?
It was more just kind of, involvement. I did a couple presentations for them because I had obviously done really well on the MCAT, and a lot of kids wanted to know what I did. Other than that, no, it was one of those things that unfortunately most of the nights they'd meet, I was at work in the ER, and so I only got to do some minor things with them. Yep.
Got it. Okay. So not a lot of impact there. College rodeo, obviously really cool. Again, a very unique kind of experience to put on an application. I would have loved to see, right? I would have loved to picture you, like what event do you do? I would have loved to see like you going out into the rodeo ring or whatever and tying a goat or whatever you rodeo people do, right? Helping me see you in that experience. Okay. To me, those are the best ways to show who you are. And so you get a little bit potentially just the scene setting with dust filled in the air in the arena as we warmed up the horses. So decent scene setting. I think you tried to get there, but ideally it's your experience and not just, oh, here's the scene I was in.
Okay.
Okay. And then again, a little sales pitchy with between the long hours and need for constant refinement of skills. I think, and I may be confusing yours with some other, but I think you have kind of refinement of skills and skills pretty often throughout the rest of your application. So constant refinement of skills, rodeo, and my agricultural upbringing have forged my industriousness. So we have industriousness here. We have your ingenuity up here from your chemistry research one. So again, just the pitching going a little bit.
Okay.
An arborist ground crew. So talking about that experience. Again, sweat crystallized into my t-shirt as it ran down my back. I hugged another armful of tree branches bound for the chipper. So again, just painting that picture was good. And again, I think you potentially a very common thing that students try to do is like, I'm going to take this arborist ground crew experience and show how I'm going to be a better doctor for it. Right. And so you took this of like, oh, like working, nobody got hurt because I made sure everyone was safe and I'm just an amazing person. And that's just the kind of doctor I'm going to be. Right. So took it to a place where it probably didn't need to go in terms of healthcare related stuff and keeping people safe. Emergency room technician. So a second one here. What was the goal of having 2 emergency room technician experiences?
So I kind of part of my story. I'm in Grand Junction. You're familiar with Colorado. I'm in Grand Junction. I came out here for my freshman year of college. I got this job at this. It's a smaller level 3, kind of more rural hospital. Got that job the end of my freshman year. End of my freshman year, I decided to transfer to CSU. So obviously resigned there. Seeing as can't really keep a PRN job 2/3 or all the way across the state.
Yeah.
Ended up at CSU. Really wasn't the experience I was wanting. So I came back to Grand Junction. And St. Mary's, which is the Western Slope Regional Trauma Center in Grand Junction, was hiring it. And that's really where I wanted to be, just, be in the thick of the action. So that's where I ended up, and that's where I am still now.
Okay. So you have on here this painting this picture, and you say, my first patient during my first shift working in a city hospital, and it was a drunk homeless man. It seems very negative. Like, okay. Darn drunk homeless dude. Right? Very dismissive. Mm-hmm. No, he's a patient.
Absolutely.
That's who he is.
Yeah.
Right? And obviously I'm not, that, right? And I'm sure you take very good care of your patients. But when you say it like that, it's just like, well, like it seems very judgmental.
Okay.
Right. And the follow-up, it was a bit of a rude awakening coming from a wealthy rural EMS system. So I just was turned off by that comment there.
Okay.
And then a little bit more of the sales pitch. I was pushed to learn how to communicate with not only a new patient population, blah, blah, blah. Right. Okay. I can communicate. That's the part of being a doctor. EMT. So part of your earlier life, I think good little story here at the beginning for your experience description. And something that I've seen a couple times now here in season 4 of Application Renovation is this puzzle theme. That you talk about the 1,000-page EMT book, blah, blah, blah. I found EMT school to be one big exciting puzzle. Students love to compare medicine to puzzles. Just like, stop it. Like, don't do it. It's not like, I am a patient. I don't want to be your puzzle. I want to be treated as a patient.
Absolutely.
Okay? So it's just a cliche that just needs to die. I just need to stomp it on its head.
All right.
Get rid of it.
Duly noted.
So decent story there. And then we have ER unit coordinator. You listed this as medical clinical. I probably wouldn't have because it's admin work, right? You're doing admin work. It just happens to be in and around medicine.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to put there, so I was like, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, doing that is not going to keep you out of medical school, but I would probably redo that one.
Okay.
Team leader, again, decent experience here. And then you have guitar here. I capitalized Google for you with my red ink. Just want to make sure those brand names are capitalized appropriately. So good. I love having hobbies, which is great. Firefighter. Again, the sales pitch aspect of my drive and commitment allowed me to blah, blah, blah in here. And then you have my years on the department sculpted who I am today. A person who's willing to put my life on the line to serve my community, right? It's a little grandiose, a little hyperbolic, and just kind of is that sales pitchy aspect that you've kind of trended towards.
Okay.
So we get to the end. Obviously, tons of clinical experience. Fantastic clinical experience is great. You have shadowing experience, at least from a virtual shadowing standpoint. And the rest of your experiences are cool, right? The rodeo stuff, the skeet shooting is cool. So not bad, right? From an experience standpoint, I'm like, okay, like nothing big standing out here. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we get to personal statement. Let's have some fun with the personal statement here. So, sweat rolled down my face as my hips bore down with the beat of staying alive, right? the super, everyone knows if you've gone to CPR class, staying alive is the beat that you do CPR to. The sweat in my eyes and the buzz of the code were overwhelmed by Dr. Whoever's remark to me earlier in the night. I would only pursue being a physician if it's the only work you can see yourself doing. That is probably one of the most cliche statements that people make when it comes to like, I can't see myself doing anything else, right? Or being told only do it if you can't see yourself doing something else. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll ignore that for now. Patient opens their eyes, squeeze my hand, blah, blah, blah. At that moment, I thought back on how I'd gotten to this point in my medical journey. So you're like, okay, here's an event that's happened. I'm going to rewind for you and kind of show you my seed. So it's an interesting opening. Not too bad. I'm confused here at the beginning. You say, okay. As a young boy, my grandma told me that her oxygen gave her the ability to fly. Okay. I had to say goodbye to her from 10 yards away, hooked up to what looked like a machine from Star Wars, and I could only wonder what it did. Okay. Interesting. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay.
I called 911 because my dad was having chest pain. I'm like, whoa, wait, I'm confused. Like, where'd your dad come from? Right? So, super confused. My dad was having chest pain, hard time breathing, swept away in a helicopter. Obviously, that's another very impactful moment for you. A little bit of sales pitch. I was proud of myself for knowing what to do. Okay, right. Yeah, pat yourself on the back. Good job, boy. These vivid memories are often what I attribute to planting the seed of my desire to become a physician. I implore everyone watching, listening, you, like, don't use the planting of the seed metaphor, right? That's just a stupid metaphor that I came up with for the book. Don't use it in your personal statement. Please don't do it. So, okay, now I get it. 2 different experiences that are planting the seed, and I think it's confusing. Okay. I would have stuck to one to make it clear what's driving this. In high school, you joined the local volunteer fire department, and you were encouraged to attend EMS training. Mm-hmm. And that's where you got your first taste of practicing medicine. So it's interesting, this kind of story that you're trying to lay out of my grandmother, my dad. I took care of them. They were sick. I had that experience that planted this seed. Oh, I just happened into EMT training because I was a firefighter. There's like a
Disconnect.
huge disconnect there.
Okay.
Did you seek out becoming an EMT, or was it just presented to you as an opportunity because you were a firefighter?
It was a little bit of both. My godfather was the fire chief for our fire department,
Yep.
and so I kind of was, if you will, a shoo-in when I was able to start what we called the junior firefighter program. And I was only supposed to go to the firefighter trainings that we had twice a month. But eventually they started encouraging me to go to the EMS trainings just to, see what it was like, if I liked it. And I did. And, it was something that I was like, this is really interesting. But it wasn't something that I went and sought out.
Yeah. Next paragraph. So some confusion there. Next paragraph. A freak trampoline accident landed me in the hospital 2 weeks before graduating high school. My plans for attending college disintegrated as I recovered from facial reconstruction. Okay. Pretty gruesome, it sounds like. As I pushed through my recovery, one of the most significant opportunities of my life presented itself, a seat in the fire department's annual EMTB class. So now I'm confused. You were joining the local fire department. You had joined. Mm-hmm. You were encouraged to attend these EMS trainings. You have this freak accident, and here's a seat in the EMT. It's like, again, this random disconnect of how are these things related at all?
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean, so when I joined, I was 14 going on 15. We did what was called the junior fire department, junior firefighter program. And I did that all through high school.
Okay.
And then once I graduated high school and turned 18, I could become a full-fledged member, do all of the things. Mm-hmm. And then once you're a full-fledged member, they ask you to get your EMT within 2 years or the equivalent training.
Yeah.
You have to take the test or whatever. And I had established myself well enough in the department that, as soon as I turned 18 and they knew I wasn't going to be leaving them for college, they were like, do you want to get your EMT? And I was like, sure, why not?
You have here, again, little sales pitch. Firefighting required intricate skill and critical thinking. Okay. EMS was about effectively serving the people you treated. All right. And then you go more, again, very common kind of things to say of I was limited as an EMT and wanted to know more. Got it. Right. Apparently you wanted to be a doctor because you had kind of mentioned that earlier. So I would assume that being an EMT is obviously limiting because that's not what you want to do. So you gotta be careful with the statements and make sure they line up. And then these next two paragraphs, I have both these next two paragraphs. I'm like, what's the goal of these things?
Okay.
So in your freshman college courses, thrilled to learn about science and yet adjusting to life and agriculture and college rodeo. And so it seemed like just timeline filling stuff that for a personal statement, I'm not sure why it's there, why it's needed. Okay. And then the goal for the second one, right? Remembering the cold, limp body of a lifeless child brought me to tears as I wrote an essay about a gruesome pediatric code. It's a little sad to think about. I don't know. I would have written about it in that way. And then working as ER tech, 12-hour hospital shifts. Again, it seems like your extracurricular activity that you're just kind of pulling in here for some reason, because there's really not much reflection as to why you're telling me this.
Okay.
Right? I found purpose in making connections with every patient I interacted with, listening to their stories and concerns, putting myself in their shoes, right? You're basically saying, I'm empathetic. I have empathy. Okay. You get into a story here of putting on a splint, and you have this story, and then you finish it. The story is okay. Okay. You finish again with this quote: I would only pursue being a physician if it's the only work you can see yourself doing. Why did you use that quote again?
It was an actual, this has actually happened. It wasn't just, esoteric. I had this actual experience with Dr. Fowler one night. I was going around. I had come back to CMU. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to go to med school. I was like, do I want to be a nurse? Do I want to go to PA school? Like really trying to, dig in and see what people thought about it. Fowler, I'm really interested in going to medical school. What's your take? What's your experience? Would you do it again? And he's like, well, Derek, if it's the only thing you can see yourself doing, do it. But it's definitely a long, hard path. And so it was one of those like, okay, like, yeah, I don't know if there's really any other option I want to take. And it had a profound effect on me at the time. That was a number of years back. And so I wanted to kind of like reflect on, that opening story.
The conclusion that you have is basically answering that question, right? It's the only work I could see myself doing. So basically your sales pitch to me, the reviewer, is I want to be a doctor because it's the only thing I can see myself doing without much connection outside of that. What are you hoping to do? How do you hope to take care of patients? Like what's going on in all of that other than it's all I can think I can do.
Okay.
Right. So some disconnect there with the goal of the personal statement, which may be causing some schools to ignore you. Let's look at school list. We have some pretty heavy hitting schools here. So we have Duke, great school, private, which is good. IU, public, out-of-state school. Hopkins, good. Penn State, good. Private. SLU, private. Cincinnati, public. Colorado, public, but that's where you're in state. Florida, public. Iowa, public. Michigan, public, but very out-of-state friendly. Virginia, public. WashU, private. And that's it.
Yeah, and then I have all my Tmdsas schools.
Yeah, and all your Tmdsas. Why did you apply to Tmdsas as well as an out-of-state applicant?
I see myself living in Texas, growing up ranching. Something that I'm really interested in. I'm also interested in sports medicine for rodeo. Being a rodeo athlete, you get hurt a lot, and I'm being a kinesiology major, someone who really enjoys working out, kind of meshing all of those things. I really like that idea. And there's a program called the Justin Sports Medicine Foundation. They do all the sports medicine for pro rodeo, and they're based out of Texas as well. And so I really like the idea of Texas. And so I figured, you can only get in if you try. And so I figured it's worth the money and the time to see if I could do it.
Yeah. You'll be the 10% potentially.
Exactly. Someone's got to be the 10%.
Someone has got to be the 10%. And that's the perfect attitude to have, as long as you're going into it educated and aware that it's a very slim chance because they focus on in-state people. All right. So the school lists could be a lot better in terms of where you're applying to less public schools, more potentially private schools or public schools that are more out of state friendly, like Michigan is, like University of Colorado is if you are out of state. So school list potentially an issue. But you've gotten 5 interviews, 2 at the same school. So that's 4 schools. 4 schools have interviewed you for 5 interviews. And you haven't had any traction. So I would love to do a why do you want to be a doctor question with you right here, right now.
For me, being a physician is about the education and really giving the patients the opportunity to see and understand why they're feeling the way they're feeling or what's wrong with them. Working in the ER, I've had a lot of opportunity to, sit in with a physician who uses big, grandiose medical terms, and you can see people who are just wide-eyed and they're like, what is happening? And, ER's fast-paced, docs in and out. Unfortunately, not a lot of connection there. And so I'll, if I have the time and the opportunity, I love sitting down with them and being like, hey, here's what I know. I'm going to try and help explain this to you as best as I can with what I know. And it makes the biggest difference, people who are tense, who don't want to be there, stressed, or a little antsy, snooty, if you will, kind of calm down. And they bring about this era aura, if you will, of, okay, thank you for explaining, in more lay terms of what is happening to me, why I'm feeling so terrible. And it makes this, full connection. And I think as a provider, I really want to take the time to say, hey, here's what's going on. And I mentioned a similar story with the mother and the child in my personal statement, about the broken bone and really making that difference. And when that happens, you can see it in a patient's eyes. You can hear it in their voice, and it makes all the hullabaloo that is medicine. The difficult patients, the long hours. It makes it all worth it. And it, there's the warm, fuzzy feeling, and it is very cliche, but when you experience it, it really is life-changing. You're like, oh my God, like I actually did something that made this person feel better, that could change the course of their medical care. And I really want to be able to take that to a larger scale than the limited information and skills that I have as an EMT.
Is that about the similar kind of answer that you give when you're interviewing?
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you think that goes over?
There's parts of it that are cliche, I think, but the answer itself is genuine. Yeah. In terms of, that feeling that I get when I'm able to really, make a difference in someone's life. It's really there, and it's really, really powerful when you feel it. And yeah. So I'm just speaking the truth.
Let's start off with how you led, right? You led with doctors don't take the time to make their patients comfortable. And I do, and I'm better than them.
It's obvious, or not obvious. That's kind of the situation in the ER I work in. Obviously, it's not everywhere. There are, I'm sure, many, many great physicians who take a lot of time with their patients. Just the experience I've had in the ER I work in.
Got it. What do you think the interviewer's thinking when you're like, who is this dude sitting in front of me throwing his colleagues under the bus?
Probably not that great, huh?
Probably not, right? It's a little arrogant. It's a little naive. There's a reason you have time to spend and they don't. They're absolutely the doctor. You're not. Mm-hmm. Right? I laugh, right, when students do that kind of stuff, because I'm like, just wait and see. You will find out why they don't have the time to answer, right? And it's an emergency room. Their job isn't to make people feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Absolutely.
Their job is to save lives, right? And obviously that's very hyperbolic, but it is. They're going from room to room, making sure that, is anyone dying? No, good. I've done my job. Right? let the nurses, let the emergency room technicians, let everyone else like make people feel comfortable. Let the internist, when I transfer them up to the floor, that's their job. Right? Obviously, you can be a warm and fuzzy ER physician. That's perfectly fine. But right off the bat, you lead with, I am better than other people who are doing it now, even though I'm not one of them. I can tell you I'm going to be better than them. And that never works. Okay. So right off the bat, I'm like, okay. And then ultimately what you really talked about was how you want to practice, not necessarily why you want to be a physician. You want to practice in a way where you're going to make patients feel comfortable. I'm like, great. I hope all physicians do that. So it's really nothing dramatic there in terms of why you want to be a doctor. Okay. You used the term provider at one point. I would just get that out of your vocabulary. You want to be a physician. You don't want to be a provider. There's a huge uproar and fight between physicians about this provider language. And so I would just stick with physician so you don't trigger anyone.
Yeah.
But in general, the goal of this question, in my mind, is the same as the goal of the personal statement. Show me, why do you want to be a doctor? Okay. And so you stuck with kind of what you hope to do as a physician, which is kind of be there, answer questions, take time, all that stuff. Great, wonderful. I applaud you. And reality will hit you in the face very likely in the future. But that's okay. It's good to be naive going in. That's okay. But it's more about what you want to do, not necessarily why you want to do it. Okay. So not necessarily answering the question and then kind of throwing colleagues under the bus to begin with.
Okay.
You interviewed at Iowa twice. Did they ask you why do you want to go to Iowa?
I honestly can't remember. I don't think they did.
Really? Okay.
No.
Interesting.
But it very well could have been.
Yeah.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. What's another question that you prepared for that you want to try to go rehash with me now? What about basic? Tell me about yourself.
Yeah, that one's a good one. I grew up in rural Colorado, small ski area town, ranching town, Crested Butte, Colorado. Grew up playing outside a lot. Ended up as a young teenager, was able to join the fire department because my godfather was the chief of the fire department. Through high school, really kind of hammered that. Ended up getting my EMT through the fire department and ended up spending a ton of my time, in college and pre-college as an EMT working in EMS. I also grew up with horses on a ranch. So rodeo was a big part of my life as well. Team roping, and I rode bulls for a short period of time. If you're not familiar, team roping is where 2 horses, 2 people, 1 cow, one ropes the head, one ropes the feet. It's for time. And so that has always brought me a lot of joy when I'm not in school or working on the fire department or in EMS. Other than that, came through college and was able to work in a level 2 trauma center, really busy. We funnel basically everything from the western slope of Colorado, ends up in our ER or our hospital. So had an amazing time working there, seen all sorts of things, worked with all sorts of people, everything from your basic abdominal pain to cracking chests and doing cardiac massage, which has been an amazing experience. And just recently moved over to working for the critical care ambulance company out of the same hospital, helping their flight teams and their ground teams out. Grew up with a family that was really sick. Unfortunately, my father was not the healthiest person, and so I spent a lot of time as a young teenager, or not even a young teenager, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, around the hospital, and definitely, kind of made it interesting. I remember playing with Hot Wheels in a cardiac ICU when I was 5 or 6 and wondering what all the beeping was from. And so definitely one of those things where you get exposed from an early age in terms of medicine, and definitely has kind of progressed into something a lot more as I grew up and kind of dipped my toes into the water and ended up rushing headfirst in.
All right. What do you think about that?
A little disorganized. I wasn't quite sure where I was going with it there at the end. Obviously that question for me is very hard because I've definitely done a lot and I'm not sure what I need, what's relevant and what's not. And so I try and hit the highlights, but then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't think I've said enough. And then when I start saying more, I'm like, I've said too much now.
Yeah. How are you judging what's good, what's not good, what should I include because of the everything you've done?
What makes me in terms of, the question is tell me about yourself. Right. And so it's not, I don't need to tell you I'm going to be a great doctor. I don't need to tell you, whatever it may be. I'm just telling you who I am as a person.
Yeah.
And so I try and hit the things that have made a mark on me, and shaped me into the man I am today.
Got it. So I think the stuff about horses, growing up on the ranch with horses was interesting. I would have loved to see a lot more of that side of you.
Okay.
Because I know that you worked as an EMT. I got that in my application. I know that you do X, Y, and Z because a lot of that's in your application. Absolutely. It's your opportunity to kind of show upbringing and family and hobbies and other stuff that you can potentially just throw some threads out there and I'd go, oh, that's really interesting, right? Let's talk about that.
As a side note, I remember in my first Iowa interview, something really similar like that. And I talked a lot about like working out and CrossFit and exercise science.
Yeah.
And then one of the physicians that was interviewing me kind of circled back around and was like, you know, you talk a lot about working out and exercise science and sports medicine. Is there a particular area of interest that you have because of that? And I wasn't really sure how to answer that because, you know, yes, orthopedics interests me. That's not the only interest I have in medicine, but I don't want to get pigeonholed as that, like, you know, basic ortho bro, if you will.
Yeah.
Although my friends say I fit the part.
Yeah. You just like every question, you have to be honest. And so the best answer would have been, yeah, I am interested in orthopedics because of my experiences. And I know that I'm going to have a lot more experiences in medical school. So
absolutely.
Yeah, you just tell the truth. Well, cool.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you come off a wait list somewhere, fingers crossed, and you end up getting in. If not, some areas to improve through your application, potentially through interviewing to hopefully get you some traction moving forward. If you have to apply again, is your MCAT score good or do you have to retake it?
This is the last year it's good for.
So if you have to apply again, you can't, or if you apply this cycle for 2022, 2023, you can still use it?
I can still use it. This is
Nice.
The last year it's good for, yeah.
All right. Well, fingers crossed. If you want, we'll get you into Application Academy for free so you can explore and learn from other people and how they're writing stuff and see
Definitely.
how that can potentially improve your writing. So just let me know. We'll get you in there.
Definitely.
Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. You know, everything you do for the medical school admissions committees and the medical school applicant community as a whole. It's amazing. And thank you again.